Welcome back, One Dragon here with another Cyberpunk 2077 video. I plan on going over a range of crafting changes that were introduced in patch 1.3. There are three categories of changes that I'll be looking at. First will be clothing, second will be modifications, and the third will take a look at the changes to components. Some of the things that I'm going to discuss today are listed clearly in the patch notes, and other things are unlisted changes that they've introduced in patch 1.3. One of the first fixes is fixing the issue where crafting specs from clothing stores were available only during the first visit to a vendor. So we're going to check out this vendor first. I'm on my level 50 character and I've definitely visited this store before. I have bought some of the clothing crafting specs that you could buy from here previously. Now I'm going to revisit it and see if the recipes are there. Oh, and there it is. We can see that there are even bully mods, which were extremely difficult to find in the last patch. So that's really good. There's bully mods in clothing stores. Obviously the Deadeye mods were always there. But more importantly, the crafting specs are back. So if you missed out on them previously, let's say you visited the store and they weren't there, then you can see that they're here now. Now what I will do is I'll leave the store and refresh a couple of times just to see if they're just always there or if it's a little bit RNG, like how I think it's supposed to be RNG, whether or not they all show up. But I got kind of lucky and all four of these showed up at the same time. Alright, yeah, so you can definitely see that they are back for sure. I skipped time and they don't always all appear like that, and I just got lucky. Do it a couple more times just to make sure. Excellent, they are definitely back. You've also got the legendary clothing mod cycling that I did there. What I'll do now is I'll also go check the other two stores. So I believe it was the Jinguchi store and this store right by the park that had craftable clothing specs. So I will go check those out. Okay, we're now at one of the stores by the park. See if they have crafting specs. Ah, there we go. So I don't remember. I think I didn't buy that jacket. So for sure, these are now fixed. The last store, Jinguji. No crafting specs, but it could just be RNG. So I'll leave it. And there we go. There are crafting specs here. They're very good. The three clothing stores that were that were bugged and had crafting specs. So it was this one, Jinguji, this other one in the park, and this one by the water. They had crafting specs that when you visit them once, they wouldn't return to the store again. They're now definitely fixed, and I just confirmed that. They also have clothing mods that show up in their pool of items to sell too, so you can definitely use that to get some bully mods. Great. So the next change is one of the free DLCs with 2 jackets that were added. So if you go to your options and to additional content, we can see here that there's these new jackets, and you should receive them as soon as you meet Dexter Sean for the first time. Vic will text you, and you don't even need to finish the text chain, so I won't do that just in case people want to experience that for themselves. And then it should just put those jackets into your stash. So they start off as rare, so you may have to scroll down all the way here. And then we have the luminescent punk jacket and the multi-layered Sin leather Delta Jock jacket. So if you notice, based on the background, or when I watched it on stream, I noticed that they were iconic, which means that you should be able to upgrade them. And yes, there you go. And I noticed as well that you should be able to craft multiple versions, which means that, yeah, you just craft the rare one a few times if you want a couple of them, and then craft the epic versions. And then after you craft the epic versions, you should be able to craft the legendary. So only one appeared and it refreshed when I did that, so I just swapped menus, swapped, and then swapped back. And there we go, we should have both jackets there as legendary. Go to my inventory, and those were all the rare ones that I crafted. There we go, legendary. So as usual, you should notice that the mod slots are RNG when you upgrade them, meaning that you may want to roll them until you get the 4-slot ones, because that's really important for stats and other things. So I would highly recommend that you craft them a couple of times until you get the 4-slot versions. Another listed patch note is balancing the number of components required to craft clothing. I don't really have many screenshots of clothing specs from before this patch, but I do have one epic one that I used in a previous video. If I use these tech goggles as an example, it seems they increase the required cost of lower tier materials, so the rare and uncommon ones were required less before, but then they decrease the cost of epic ones, so overall it's cheaper than it was previously. On to modifications. Modifications have changed quite significantly in patch 1.3. First, they removed RNG related to mod rarity. Previously, the rarity between common to epic was quite random, and it was capped based on the character's level. As you can see here, they also added legendary variations of the modifications that have increased stats from the epic versions, so they're not just straight side grades, they should be upgrades. I've seen the crafting specs in weapon vendors when I was shopping around, and I found one randomly while I was making a previous video. The crafting specs for these modifications are actually quite costly, but it seems like they'll be available in the open world. So I'm here at a random gun vendor in Arroyo, and this guy had 2 legendary crafting specs, Crunch and Pacifier. You can see that they are 27,500 eddies each, which is quite costly, but not so bad if you get into crafting and you use a crafting loop to get eddies. Overall, I'm not entirely sure if you can find them in the open world, but I feel like you can because I personally didn't need to buy these crafting specs to have them unlocked. But, you know, just in case, if you're starting a new playthrough, you can find them at the merchants. I did find Resist out in the open world just randomly, so you may be able to find the other ones as well, but I'll try to keep people updated when or if I start a new playthrough. Another change was adding crafting specs for cyberware mods. As you can see here, there's a whole bunch of crafting specs. I'm not entirely sure which ones were added because there were quite a few. Most of the times you could find them from any of the Ripper docs. If you click on the trade tab, you can just find cyberware modifications there. Another change that I noticed is that they fix how the modifications appear on both armor and on weapons. So previously the modifications would show like a cumulative amount on each one of the modifications that were there, and now they just show how much they add individually. Okay, so moving on to components. Let's start with the listed change, that is the ability to use the slider to upgrade components. So if you use the perk Tune-Up, which I previously didn't really use, you can upgrade your components using a slider. As soon as you craft one, you can use that slider there. It should be based on how many components of the other tier that you have, but yeah, just keep in mind that the components themselves are really quite cheap, so you may want to buy them instead of upgrading components. In patch 1.2, they drastically decreased the cost of components, and they once again decreased the price of components in patch 1.3. This effectively means that if you are struggling with eddies, then buying components and crafting them into items to sell is extremely profitable. So if we take a look here, we've got the common ones now at 4 eddies, The uncommon ones now at 6 eddies. Rare components now at 12 eddies. Epic now at 18 eddies. And legendary at 44 eddies. So compared to the 1.2 prices, these 1.3 prices have been reduced by a further 20%. If you'd like to see one of my videos about how to get infinite money through crafting, I'll link that in the description. Another crafting related fix that they mentioned in the patch notes was fixing crazy science. I personally never had the need to upgrade this, but once again, if you're really struggling on eddies, then crazy science might be helpful there. This has been One Dragon. Hopefully you found that video informative on the crafting changes. I'll also be taking a look at the balance changes, especially to stuff involving the quick hacks. So consider subscribing. I'll see you later, chimps.